In today's episode, I want to talk to you about how to find guests for your podcast. So, there's a couple of different ways that you can do it, and something that I've used as a podcast host myself when trying to find guests. And I'm trying to find unique quality guests that maybe haven't been recycled on so many different podcasts. And it's kind of counterintuitive to running a podcast booking company where we're working with clients to get them booked on 20 interviews at a time or 30, 40 interviews, where sometimes we're just trying to find a unique guest that not too many people have heard of. And this isn't to say that this is the case with every guest that I have on my podcast, but here's some ways that you can do it. One would be networking groups. And I found quite a few guests for my podcast from these different networking groups that I attended. I use conferences as well. So whether if you're going to real estate conferences, whatever it may be, I found that was also beneficial when it came to finding podcast guests and just meeting folks and being like, hey, you want to come on my podcast? Or I'm a big networker on LinkedIn, and I find a lot of people is good content. So I'll be like, hey, love your content, want to come on my podcast? Worst thing they can say is no or be unresponsive at the end of the day. So I'll ask anyone to be a guest on my podcast if I like what they have to say, if I like their content. I would say like join like groups. Like I'm a part of the left field investor community, and that's mainly for passive investors. And just be like, oh, like that guy's an interesting story. Let me reach out to him, invite him on the podcast. Or yeah, I want to have that person on my podcast. So that's a couple of different ways that you can do that. You can tap into your network, be like, oh, I want to have X, Y, and Z on my podcast. And it's just taking the time to sit down and thinking about who you want to have on your podcast and just making the time for it. When I had first started my podcast back in the day, I know we've talked about it a few times now, but I made a list of 50 podcast guests I wanted to have on my podcast. And it was everywhere from Elon Musk to Jesse Itzler to you name it. Probably had, very successful entrepreneurs out there. And I got one guest booked out of the 50. It was Mike Dillard, very successful online entrepreneur. Listen to one of my other podcast interviews or watching this on YouTube. I forgot to hit the record button when I was interviewing Mike. So that kind of sucked back then. But nonetheless, I started off like that. I built out a list. I just use a Google sheet, go through. Okay, I want to have these folks on my podcast. I reached out. They booked the interview. Never heard from them. Maybe I contact them through their social media channels, whatever it may be, and how you want to go through it, whether, again, networking groups, conferences, communities, masterminds, whatever you may be in. I would start there for finding guests for your podcast. And once you go through that, the next area would be going through Amazon. And what I mean by Amazon is sometimes I can find authors who have a book coming out within a new release, maybe the next 90 days, maybe their book just came out in the last 30 days. And I'm trying to find someone that, they're going to want to talk about their book. They're going to want publicity about their book, but maybe they haven't been heard of by too many people. So for those listening, I'll walk you through it. So I'll go to like Amazon. Let me see if I'm searching for like real estate investing books. So that's going to pop up, and I'm going to come over here on the left side of Amazon. So you type in real estate investing books. For those listening, come over on the left side of Amazon. You can see books where it says new releases, last 30 days, last 90 days, coming soon. Let me just do coming soon. So now you can see all these books that are going to be released soon. So you can see there's a book more by Mark Lane, more leads, more deals, more profits, the inside secrets of real estate millionaires. That one sounds kind of interesting. Maybe I want to have Mark on my podcast. Now there's these different podcast book out there. Escaping the housing trap, the strong town's response to the housing crisis. That sounds pretty interesting. Maybe I want to have him on my show. Now there's this book, Bringing Adam Smith into the American Home, a case against homeownership. Well, that sounds like an interesting topic. Let me click on the author. Let me get more information about them, and let me reach out to them. Obviously, you can see some of these have reviews, so they probably already come out, so it's not a foolproof process. But you can see, like, tap your assets. How to achieve financial freedom in 2 years with just one rental home. That's definitely interesting. So there's all these different books out there that you can use and search through Amazon to try to find different quality authors that maybe people haven't had on their podcast before. And then the last recommendation I would be would just be to look at other podcasts. And you could go on like a tool like Raphonic, you could go on iTunes. And obviously, if you search like real estate investing podcasts, there's numerous of the ones out there. You can just go through, see the different guests. Oh, yeah, I want to talk about that topic. Let me reach out to that individual. Maybe I want to bring on someone talking about precious metals. Maybe I want to talk about someone, gold, silver. Oh, that individual's an expert in it. Let me reach out to him. I find that gives me some ideas as well, but it goes back to my first point where I don't want to have someone that is recycled all the time on my podcast. I try to find some new and fresh and unique guests where, again, if someone's been on, though, 20, 30, 40, 50 episodes, they make for a really good quality guest. They know what to expect versus someone that's been only on a handful of shows or never been on an interview. But it's that ebb and flow. It's trying to find that happy medium between folks that have been a guest on shows, not been on too many shows, but been on just enough shows or have a good quality saying. So it's kind of up in the air, but really what works best for you and what you're looking to do is what I would stick to. But I hope that was helpful on how to find guests for your podcast. And that way you never run out of good quality guests that you have for your show. And until next time, I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.